Hey folks, and welcome back to another episode of Straight Talk Whiskey. I'm Nick here with you as always. Thanks for joining us for episode number 136. So today, what we've got for you is a nice rye whiskey, the Russell's Reserve 6-year Kentucky straight rye whiskey, and it's bottled at a nice 45% ABV, so 90 proof. Again, I said in the past we were not going to keep reviewing things that were only 40% ABV and really offered no bang for our consumer's buck. So I can tell that this has been around for a little while because on the labeling it talks about having more than 90 years combined experience between Jimmy and Eddie Russell and the family working in the distillery. And we know now that, like with the 101, that's paying tribute to the over 101 years combined experience that they both have working in the industry. So it's pretty interesting. But I like this because other than that, it's pretty tame as far as packaging and labeling goes. And I think that's true for most of Wild Turkey's offerings. So yeah, if you didn't already know that this was a Wild Turkey product, I mean, there's a brief distilled and bottled by the Wild Turkey Distilling Company, Lawrenceburg, Kentucky on the back, but otherwise you may not know. But obviously Russell's Reserve is paying homage to both the master distillers there, Jimmy and Eddie Russell. So anyway, let's go in for the nose. Now, the first thing that comes out, I mean, it's Wild Turkey. Like, you know what it is if you've drunk it at any length over time. You'll know that it's just got that really nice, robust, fruity bouquet of the rye notes that are in that. It's at least 6 years old, and when the rye, I'm not sure exactly what the percentage of rye content is, obviously over 51%, but I think that it aims towards the higher end of the spectrum in terms of the content of rye comprising the mash bill, if you will, because it's got some really nice fruity notes, but also a really great pepperiness to it that you don't even have to taste it. You can sense it right on the nose. A little bit of the traditional, bourbon, vanilla, slightly cinnamon, charred oak. Anyway, let's go in for the color. You can tell it's been a little while since I've done this. I am moving pretty soon, so this is actually going to be the last whiskey review that I do in this location. So stay tuned for the new location that'll be up and coming. Hopefully better and a little bit better, more consistent offerings, if you will, in terms of a weekly whiskey review session. So anyway, the color, yeah, we don't have to go in for it. We can just look at it. Just your traditional, coppery amber hues going on there. Kind of a rusty gold, the beauty that's in there. It says 6 years old. I'm not sure, that's the minimum age that comprises the rye whiskey in here, but I'm not sure how old the oldest, proportion or aspect of this whiskey is. But who knows? It seems like it might be a little bit older than 7 or 8 years, but I'm not sure. Who knows? The taste instantly is a direct reflection of the nose. You got those traditional high rye content flavors coming through, a little bit of fruitiness, but also a lot of peppery, and I'm talking about like ground pepper, fresh ground pepper, not green or red pepper or jalapeno. That would be interesting in a whiskey. But you get that paired with a little bit of dry fruit that's coming through, and on the tip of the tongue you get a nice little vanilla coating that sort of just sits there on the tip of the tongue and doesn't really go too far into the palate and kind of just stays up front. Just a really nice, good sipping whiskey, 45% ABV. It's got a little bit more potency to it than your traditional standard Kentucky bourbons or Kentucky ryes might have. You're just getting it straight off the possibly slightly lower than middle shelf section of your liquor store. But one of the things that it's funny, it came up in a couple of comments about washing my glasses. People don't often know that I'm not just like going straight into a new bottle or something like that. I usually try to taste it a little bit. I think it's important if you're going to taste whiskey, or if you're actually in it for the experience of it, and that you're not just like getting a bottle to party on with friends or something like that, but actually buying it to savor it and really explore what it has to offer. And for the money that you're paying, I think you should. But that's just my personal opinion. But I like getting it out, just opening it for a little bit. You don't have to let it sit on the counter overnight. That's not going to produce a good effect. But you let it open a little bit and pour yourself a small glass or two. Right, we're not filling up an 8-ounce glass, like we would for our chocolate milk. But just give it a few passes. Know that that's not going to be the heart and soul of the whiskey that you're tasting. That's just going to be, that's the top end. That's the most that's exposed to the potential oxygen and sunlight that's in there, because typically, obviously, it's closer to the cork or the screw cap or what have you, and also that top portion of it. If it hasn't been, jostled around on the shelf or in shipping or something like that, you look right above the label, in this area is going to be a bit more exposed to light, whether it's sunlight or artificial lighting in a store or something like that. It's not like crazy. It's not like if you shine your glow light on the whiskey, it's going to affect it instantly. It's going to take some time. But like I said, this says for over 90 years. It seems like they were probably pretty close to that 90-year combined experience mark when they produced it, and now they're at over 101 years, right? Because we've got the several offerings of Wild Turkey 101 in both a rye and some other variations. So you got to think that this has been probably on the shelf for a little bit or stored somewhere before it was picked up by the liquor store that I went to. So that's just a little bit of information for you. It's just, that all boils down to give it a little bit of time. So as well as a little bit of time, you give it a little bit of water. I'm not going to, because I find that as it is bottled, I like it. That's where my preference would be. If I were to, water it down a little bit by a few drops, that seems like a happy medium where it's at its 90 proof. So we'll take one last taste here. Don't know if you can hear that in the background, but we got the emergency services going on, which really adds a nice little, ambiance to your whiskey tasting, which is why I'm glad I'll be moving up into the mountains where probably won't be hearing that as much. So anyway, just a really nice, and this is kind of weird, but on the finish of this, it's almost like a sherry note, a dessert wine kind of finish, and it sort of lingers in the back of the mouth. It reminds me of like some great like Christmas parties with family, and just having a fruit punch, and they dump a bunch of like rainbow sherbet in there, sherbet wherever you're from, however you say it, but it's just got that really like creamy texture, and a lot of that has to do with the rye content. It's just beautiful texture to it that makes you get the sense, and not just the sense, but in all actuality, you're getting more for your money with this. Price wise, honestly, I tend to buy these things and then it's like a couple weeks before I review them, so I can't really remember. But I want to say that this, at least where I am, and the wonderful liquor taxation sensation state, really is about mid-40 range. So I feel like this should probably go for the high 30s, really. But that's what I'm getting it for. And it may even been a little higher. I'm not actually sure. But that's always a guiding factor when I go in, because I'm not like some of the other reviewers that can just go in and afford, the upwards of $200, $300 whiskeys at a pop, and do reviews multiple times a week. It's great that they do that. I would love to get to that point, but that's not sort of where I am. Sort of just the occasionally I'll splurge on, a bottle, that costs a lot, but that's because I'm really eager and excited for it. I don't just go and buy something that I end up saying, well, that wasn't really great, or that wasn't really worth it. Because as a consumer and as a whiskey enthusiast, right, not a whiskey snob, I don't claim to be that, and I don't ever want to be. I do a little bit of research, much like you probably are doing if you're watching this video, is you might be seeing this out at the store and say, should I buy it? Does someone else think it's good? You know, what are some of the flavors and notes that I might find interesting or might find appealing to me? That's how I got into the whiskey exploration. You know, I liked whiskey, had no clue in the world that there was so much nuance to it. So anyway, there you go. I also want to say, with the current events and state of the world, the Black Lives Matter movement, I just want to say that myself personally and the entire, Straight Talk Whiskey channel stands for equality, stands with all those that are out there protesting, stands for all those people that are not capable right now, especially with the coronavirus going on, of being able to physically, get out there and protest, but are supporting in other ways, that are contacting the legislator, lawmakers, reaching out, trying to educate themselves even, right? So just want to pledge the full support of that. Some of you may not like it. I don't really care. I think it's important to me as an individual, and it should be important to the entire community. The whiskey community in general, the spirits community in general, I found a very open, very warm, welcoming. Yeah, you got those outliers every now and then, right, that are just going to be stupid, and you're going to have people, on different extremities of their, or extremes rather, of, ways of thinking. But I think for the most part, as a whole, this is a loving, welcoming community that I hope to see, more and more diversity in the future. That's all we can hope for and all we can advocate for, right? Because idly standing by is also not great. So I thought it was important to mention that. Anyway, that wraps it up for this review. Again, if you're going to drink responsibly, and we will see you next time.